Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Grizzly Peaks National Park Build Series, a collaborative project between myself and the very incomparable Booter. Today, we are actually going to be working on the display wall side opposite of the guest service visitor center desk that we worked on last week. Booter actually came to me with this idea. He was, browsing around on Google about, looking at some different, ideas and what we can really put in the visitor center that would really stand out a little bit and kind of create more of that wood, forest vibe, but still how can you, give that or show that to your guest in some form of a tribute or respect? And the best thing I could think of, or that he thought of, was just creating like a display wall of kind of the nature outside, the animals, the rocks, the grass, the textures, trees, everything. So that's what we're doing. And it's a very small version, but something that I think was, it's going to also make this pop really, really well. So biggest challenge by far was finding the appropriate grass. So on the TMTK Steam Workshop, toolkit, the Steam Workshop toolkits. One of these days I'll learn how to speak correctly. That is going to be grass. I'll have to look up, because I forgot the name exactly who created this, but there's a bunch of different textures. This one was the most realistic in terms of just what I was trying to go for. And the only fortunate part is because it is such a high detailed grass. One of the unfortunate things with Thememaker's Toolkit and just the way you have to kind of get that into Blender and so on and so forth is you have to really kind of cut down on the poly count, which is the amount of details that you can see. So as you zoom out, unfortunately, you do see a little imperfection there. We're going to ignore that and pretend like it doesn't exist, even though I just called myself out on it. So, basically we're creating a little habitat here, and it's going to be display habitat. So I wanted to incorporate some of the rocks that I used outside while doing the mountain terraforming, some of the trees. I think this, it's a dead spooky tree. I think it worked well for kind of the look I'm accomplishing. A few tree stumps. These two tree stumps particularly are Thememaker's Toolkit items that I will also post links for down below. And I don't know what I was doing with the bush, but I just wanted to do something with shrubbery. So one of my big secrets here for kind of incorporating a realistic looking tree or grass, or good for just floor filler, is the street ash tree. That tree, I love the way it looks. I love the way that it looks like overgrown, like a bush, but it has like a grass effect to it. It's really, really good for filling in like a forest floor, even in like a full-on amusement park. It's a really good filler, so definitely use that piece whenever you can. Sink it down into the ground pretty far, and then just rotate and slightly elevate it, slightly lower, and it'll get a really good finished look. So once that floor was finished, an amazing person, I believe his name is One Dead Duck, on the workshop, created a massive amount of animals, which you can also find within the actual game Planet Zoo. But even though they are not functioning animals, to where we can, they don't have the full functionality of what they do in Planet Zoo, it still has that look that I'm going for here. So there's like, penguins and seals and chipmunks and all kinds of cool stuff. So I'll post a link to his workshop as well. He has really, really great, animals in there. The deer was created by a person named Marketer, also available on the Steam Workshop. And the grizzly bears, I believe they're also part of the One Dead Ducks animal pack, and they'll get posted on there as well. The only other thing that I can think of would be the chipmunks. Those were created by xDaddyPoe on the Steam Workshop. So hopefully I'm giving the proper credits out here. I just want to make sure I'm, giving everybody credit where credit is due. They did an amazing job with just the way a lot of this looks, and I just think it really, really adds to what I'm trying to go here for this display exhibit overall, which I think is really cool with just incorporating into the visitor center somehow. So after we get everything in place, and once we get, the animals in the place and what we want it to look like. I was kind of confused of how I wanted to use the glass, how I wanted to create glass with making it seem more of like an exhibit versus it's just something that's just, I don't know, there for no reason at all. So for me, when I create my windows, when I create display windows, anything that incorporates actual like glass, which is Thememaker's Toolkit as well, I try to really stop and look at like window seals and how windows are really built. A lot of the times I see a lot of builders, which is fine, but a lot of builders use, you know, an arch shape or a beam even, and then just put the window right on that. I like to create different seals to where it's just again that depth that really makes your windows pop even more. So you'll see that I stacked beams on top of smaller beams on top of, and you go even smaller on the way up, just to give you more of that, you know, depth of having an actual window seal there versus just a straightforward, you know, window to glass or glass to beam or whatever. So then we just gonna section this off using all the way to the roof, all the way down, just to get, you know, that area embedded into that wall over there. The cool thing with the visitor center, and I think I emphasized it in the last video, Booter did an amazing job on just giving me a bunch of open space to be able to utilize and just put a bunch of really cool, unique things in there. But not so open that I think it takes away from everything. This gives, you know, you the ability, if you are interested in doing realistic interiors, especially with like guest service centers or welcome centers or whatever your project may be that may incorporate one, it allows you to tie in the different sides of that room together. So for me, like I said, I use that one side that we see behind us is going to be the desk area. This side is the display wall. That way, you know, as you're standing in line for the guest service area, you can see, you know, you can turn around and be like, okay, well, this is just what I'm going to see outside. This is what's going to, you know, what the Grizzly Peaks National Park is really going to look like. I'll be able to see these animals in there. And later on, I don't think I actually emphasized it in this video, but I did add small TV screens, did some Google imaging, and took some pictures of deers with some, you know, information facts about deers and grizzly bears. Obviously, Grizzly Peaks National Park, we're going to have grizzly bears in the park. And plenty of deer, plenty of chipmunks, plenty of eagles. A wolf, I think, is added in a little bit later as well. But it's all about kind of combining nature animals that you would see in that region that we're going for, kind of the alpine slash somewhat deciduous. Just, I'm only saying that because I use deciduous plants in the alpine region. But just, again, those type of animals are incorporated into the national park somehow, and I really wanted to kind of pay tribute to them by creating this display window here. As you'll see, again, like I said, I'm just creating a bunch of different sealants in there just to kind of add more depth to that window itself. I try to get all my beams in place before I add in the glass paneling, just because the glass paneling does, it's Thememaker's Toolkit, so if you do make a mistake on the beams and you try to go back to correct it, it's only going to pick up on the glass. So always try to make sure that you do your absolute best in trying to get all your beams and, you know, your seals and everything where you're trying to go before you put those glass panels in. It was a little challenging with the just having diagonal part here, but again, I had to kind of freehand that. Booter, just because of the unique way he builds and the style that he builds, also with the construct of this building, it isn't done on even angles. So a lot of it, you know, it's not built on 15-degree angles. It's not built on 30-degree angles. It's not built on 45-degree angles. It's built free-handed just because of the texture of the, you know, the type of roof he wanted and kind of how the overall layout of this entire building is. So kudos to Booter for being able to pull that off. It did make putting the beams here a little bit more challenging, but I don't think we necessarily had this 100% plan to add this in, but we made it work. We did what we had to do and made it work. So again, I just think that this was a great way to incorporate it all into just getting this completely finished. And yeah, shall be back shortly once I get all these glass panels in and stick around and check it out. And I'll touch base with you in just a few. So with any exhibit that you see, we want to create like kind of a backdrop. So I used the large projection screen. I want to say that one was 8 meters. And we're also using video wall screens here for the ceiling, just to kind of emphasize a little bit of like a sky, simulation there. But all in all, I really wanted to make this kind of pop out. And when you enter the visitor center, there's 4 different ways to enter, 2 from the front and then 1 on each side, the left and the right. And no matter what side you come in from, your eye is going to be somewhat drawn to this, because the backdrop that I'm going to use for it is really just going to make everything pop. What I like to do as I'm creating a lot of these, I have done display settings like this before, is I try to look at what is going to draw people's eye to it the quickest. And I think because of the room's colors and the way the room itself is laid out and designed, your eye is just going to be drawn to, okay, there's a bear there, there's a deer there, there's a tree there, and then again, the big backdrop wall that we're going to use, I'm going to use a mountainscape. It's just going to add, even more to that. So that's definitely a really cool tip. If you are looking at creating an exhibit such as this, look at where you can, draw the visitor's eye, what's going to attract people to it. We go into amusement parks, just for example, you look at something like Cedar Point, and the first thing you see upon entering Cedar Point, apart from the entire skyline of roller coasters, but Gatekeeper is right there. Your eyes are drawn to it. It's the entrance. It towers over you. The wing coaster element, it's unique still, even though we've seen lots of wing coasters out there. It just draws your attention to it. So apply that, not necessarily in the roller coaster sense, but apply that even when doing just scenery objects and interior designs and stuff like this. What's going to draw the guest attention to it? That's a little tidbit for realism, just from my perspective, I guess you can say. So with the glass panels, you always, just because they are so thin and they are objects that were made outside of, they're not in-game objects, you want to be sure that when you're putting them next to each other, you put them in as tight as you possibly can, or you're going to get that weird midline there. It was a little challenging just to ensure that I wasn't going to overdo it, but I think the way it turned out was okay. In retrospect, we don't see that type of stuff. We don't see like seams of the windows in real life. It's just one straight panel. So that was kind of the look I was trying to go for there. Underneath, I'm adding in some neon lights, just to, again, add a little bit of extra pop to it. Because I used the color panels on the floor, it's going to be reflective. It's going to have some type of reflectiveness to it naturally, without using reshade, without any in-game filters or anything like that. Natural reflection right off the bat. So keep that in mind too if you are doing interiors. That I know we want to get like, floors that match a lot of the themes and stuff, and that is great. But to really get the most out of the in-game stuff, I would highly recommend, or in-game, I guess you can say, lighting effects. When it comes to ambient lighting, definitely the color panels reflect the most beautifully, in my opinion. I wanted to also create some form of lights inside of the display panel. Again, Planet Coaster, as I've discussed before, does have some pretty harsh lighting. So again, I try to dim down that lighting quite a bit. And I think I lost my light there for a little bit, which for some weird reason, I lose a lot of objects in the game, which is horrible to say. So Booter, you might come across a light at some point. But no, actually, I think I deleted that one. But with the light system, I really wanted to kind of lightly show off the display case. And by doing so, it's just a matter of trying to incorporate the right amount of lighting in there. So yeah, our display case is finished. But yeah, thank you for tuning into this episode. Next week, we're going to be working on the gift shop area of the visitor center. And if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to write them down below, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you again for tuning in. I cannot say thank you all enough. You all are amazing. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you feel like it. If not, that's okay too. Just keep tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. And so from here on out, Solaris out.